Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip into the thick woolen tunic of a Viking fisherman, cold toes and all, and see what a perfectly average day looked like. Not raids, not epic longboats, not yelling Valhalla into battle. Just the quietly soggy life of a man whose job was to catch fish, not fame. You stand on the rocky coast of a Scandinavian village around the year 900. The air smells like salt, pine smoke, and the faint promise of yesterday's herring. The wind is that special kind of sharp that finds the one opening in your layers and stabs through it. The sun is thinking about rising, but only sort of. You stretch, already aching a little. Your boots are damp from yesterday. Your fingers, not quite your own yet. Welcome to morning. You're not a warrior or a chieftain. You're something much more important. The guy who keeps everyone from starving. Well, unless you have a bad fishing day, then you're just the guy who brings back excuses. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shoulder your worn-out fishing net, knotted by hand, maybe by your grandfather, and trudge across frost-stiff grass toward the shore. The boat waits, resting in its bed of seaweed and half-melted ice. It's a small, narrow craft, perfect for hugging the fjords, but questionable in anything more ambitious than light drizzle. Other men gather nearby, quiet with the kind of tiredness that's been repeated every day since they were old enough to gut a fish. Someone yawns, someone sneezes, someone mutters something about the wind being wrong today. You pretend not to hear it. Bad omens before breakfast are a no-go. Your wife packed you a small leather pouch of dried meat and barley bread. It's not fancy, but it'll keep you upright. You make a mental note to try and trade for some seabird eggs later. Your youngest has a birthday coming up, and nothing says celebration like a half-dozen gull eggs and maybe a dried apple. As you load the boat with your net, some stone weights, and a carved wooden float shaped like a seal, no one remembers why, you pause to glance at the horizon. The water today is the colour of old pewter, and gulls shriek above like they know something you don't. You slap the side of the boat once, out of habit or superstition, who knows, and slide it into the surf. Historians still argue whether most Viking coastal villages used fish purely for local consumption, or if preserved catch was widely traded inland. But from your point of view, the answer is simple. If it doesn't get eaten or sold, it's bait. You push off from shore. The cold seawater seeps in through the cracks in the boat's joints, and your boots are officially wet again. Great. You glance back at the village. Just a scattering of turf-roofed houses, thin chimney smoke curling upward. And sigh. Out here, at least no one asks why your last batch of salted mackerel tasted like smoked socks. And here's a quirky fact. Viking fishermen sometimes used cormorants to help herd fish toward nets. You don't have one, but a guy in the next village swears by his, calls it Eric, claims the bird understands Danish better than his cousin. You nod when he tells the story, but mostly you're just impressed the bird hasn't flown off yet. You settle into the rhythm of morning. Pull net, check knots, toss seaweed overboard. There's something meditative about it, even with the constant ache in your back. Life's not glamorous, but it's real, tangible. Your hands know what they're doing, even if your brain's still trying to remember if you dreamed about falling into the fjord again. A neighbour calls out from his boat. Something about the wind changing. You pretend not to hear. That's the third wind comment today. Fourth, if you count the gulls. You smile a little, despite yourself. There's peace in this repetition. Out here, no one cares about kings or raiders, or whether your tunic matches your belt. There's just the sea, the sky, and the slight chance you'll catch enough cod to trade for some honeyed oats. Your oars creak gently as you row farther from shore, the motion steady, measured. Part muscle memory, part survival instinct. The boat slides across the glassy surface of the fjord, threading its way through narrow cliffs that rise like the teeth of some ancient beast. You try not to think about beasts, just row. The chill bites deeper out here. Sea spray lashes your cheeks and your fingers go a little numb around the oar handles. But this is normal. This is good. The cold keeps you alert, and besides, you've dealt with worse. There was that time last spring when your boat sprang a leak mid-fjord and you had to paddle back using your lunch basket. A humbling day, though your wife still brings it up when she wants a laugh. You pass a familiar rock formation that looks suspiciously like a sleeping troll, at least to your uncle, who swears it winked at him once. You've stopped questioning these things. In Viking coastal life, myth and map blur together. You grew up learning to spot fishing zones based on where the sea spirits were rumoured to nap. Don't drop nets near the Whispering Reef, they'd say. That's where the drowned whisper back. You reach the deeper water where the cod are known to gather, dragging your anchor stone overboard and watching it plunk into the dark. You tie off your net lines with fingers still stiff from rowing, working quickly before the cold sets in too deep. A passing gull shrieks and circles overhead, then drops something suspiciously soft and white onto your shoulder. You sigh, again with the gulls. Should have brought Eric, you mutter under your breath, imagining the smug look on that cormorant's face. That bird probably doesn't even row. As you lower the net into the water, a current catches it just slightly to the left, enough to matter. You adjust, bracing your knee against the hull, and try again. Fishing, it turns out, is as much patience as precision, and luck. And maybe whether you remembered to sacrifice a bit of bread to Njord, the sea god, last Thursday. Historians still argue whether Viking fishermen actively worshipped Njord in daily practice, or if it was more of a just-in-case policy. You, personally, aren't taking chances. The net sinks, weighted and ready, disappearing into the green-black depths. You sit back and wait, wrapping your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. Across the water, a low mist begins to rise, curling in tendrils. You can smell the fish before you see them, a rich, briny tang that makes your stomach growl. That's either a good sign or a warning, possibly both. This is where the rowing ends and the real waiting begins. You pick at your bread, chew thoughtfully, and glance toward a distant boat where two men are already arguing, one pointing west, the other gesturing wildly at the sky, probably debating whether a cloud looks like Odin's beard or just regular fog. You recline slightly, letting the boat drift on its anchor. You close your eyes for just a second, okay, maybe a minute, and imagine warmer days. Summer trips further north when the water practically glows with life and even the seals seem to laugh at your efforts. Last year, one stole half your catch and left behind a flat rock. You kept it anyway. Might be lucky. Fringe accounts from early Norse folklore even describe selkies, seal people who shift shapes to live among humans. You're not sure you believe that one, but the way that seal looked at you? Suspicious. You jerk upright at the tug on your net. Real or imagined, it's enough to make your heart skip. You scramble to your knees and begin hauling the line back in, palms burning with the familiar friction of sea rope. The weight is promising, heavy, but not impossibly so. You pull, arms shaking, until the net breaks the surface. Fish flash silver in the daylight, twisting and slapping, scales catching what little sun there is. A decent haul. Not miraculous, but enough. You grin. This should buy you a few extra bundles of dried fruit. Maybe even a goat skin of that spicy mead from the southern traders, the one your wife claims makes you too cheerful. You scoop the fish into the boat with practiced movements, flicking the last one off the net with a grunt. A few flop around your feet and you nudge them into a basket. You'll gut them later. Right now, you need to reset the net and try for one more round before heading back. Time is slippery out here, The sky doesn't give many clues, and your stomach clock is notoriously unreliable. It's still growling, so who knows? You pause, resting your hands on your knees, breath misting in the air. A moment of quiet. No gulls, no splashing, no wind. Just the steady pulse of the water under you. Out here, with no crowds, no feasts, and no hero's welcome waiting, this is what you get. A quiet boat, a net full of fish, and a sky that might snow if it feels like it. Honestly, it's not a bad way to spend a day. The boat rocks gently as you reset your net for a second round. Your arms are already tired, but there's always a little more strength left when the catch is good. You loop the damp ropes carefully, not because anyone's watching, but because sloppy knots mean lost dinner. Or worse, more time explaining things back at home. You toss the net back into the water, its weighted ends tugging it down into the deep again. The sea slaps at the side of the boat, not violently, just persistently, like a cat pawing at a door trying to get your attention. You sit back, wiping your forehead with a sleeve that smells faintly of herring, wood smoke, and regret. The clouds have thickened now, making the sky look like a very moody porridge. And there it is again, that feeling that the fish are watching you, not the other way around. There's a folk tale about that, of course. There always is. An old story about a fisherman who was too greedy, who kept hauling up more than his share. One day the sea sent a fish that spoke in a human voice and warned him to stop. He didn't. That night he vanished. Boat, nets, the whole lot. The only thing they found was a single boot filled with seaweed. You glance at your own boots. Still there. Still slightly too wet. Just as your stomach starts loudly wondering what happened to breakfast, there's another tug on the line. A strong one. You grip the net, brace your feet against the side of the boat, and pull. It fights you, jerking and lunging like something larger than you expected. Definitely not just cod. Could be a stubborn lumpfish. Or, if the gods are feeling dramatic, maybe a small shark. You hope it's not a seal again. Last time that happened, the thing slapped you across the face with its tail and left you with a black eye and a new nickname. Seal Kisser. As you haul the net closer, you see the wriggling shapes of your catch, bigger this time, with a few surprises mixed in. A bright red lumpfish, a slippery eel trying to escape through a hole in the net, and, oddly, a chunk of driftwood carved into what looks like a miniature longship. You squint at it. Maybe someone upstream is playing tricks, or maybe it's just a child's toy lost at sea and now part of your strange bounty. You scoop the catch into your boat, sloshing water as you go. A decent pile now, enough to earn some respect at the harbour, which is saying something. Viking society had its warriors, sure, but feeding the village earned its own kind of pride. Fishers weren't glorified in sagas much, but no one complained when the stew pot was full. You swat away another gull trying to get a free snack and tie the net securely. You'll head in now. You've got enough for trade and dinner, and your back is loudly threatening to go on strike. But not before a little seasoning. You reach into a clay pot tucked beneath your seat. Sea salt and dried herbs from your wife's stash. A pinch for the fish, a pinch tossed overboard for Njord. Historians still argue whether offerings like this were deeply spiritual, or just habit passed down through generations. You're not sure it matters. You do it because your father did it, and because your grandmother claimed fish taste better when the sea's in a good mood. There's a technique you use, half magic, half muscle, to begin the process of gutting and salting a few of the fish right here on the boat. The rest will be done back home, but some need to be preserved immediately, especially the oily ones like herring. You slice and clean with practiced efficiency, tossing the innards overboard to the delight of the gulls now circling in greedy spirals. One of the fish is unusually colourful, with stripes down its sides and tiny teeth that look like a goblin's grin. You blink. You've never seen one quite like it before. You wrap it separately. Maybe someone in the village will know what it is, or maybe it'll just become the weird fish we smoked and never talked about again. By now, your hands are stiff, your nose is running, and your stomach has officially given up hope. The sky has darkened, but not ominously, just enough to remind you that the day's marching on. You mop your face with your sleeve again and take a moment to enjoy the silence. Well, the semi-silence. A seal pops up nearby, stares at you, blinks twice, and disappears. You're starting to wonder if it's the same one from last time, the one that stole your lunch and gave you side-eye. It's probably spreading rumours about you in seal taverns. You begin pulling up anchor, your boat heavier now, sitting lower in the water. You check the seams, no leaks, no cracks. Good. You don't want a repeat of last autumn, when one too many flopping fish nearly sent you overboard, and the rest of the day was spent clinging to a barrel. With the catch secured, salted, and contained, you set the oars back into position. The muscles in your arms grumble as you begin the journey back. Row, row, repeat. The rhythm is slower now, but steady. The tide is with you this time, and that helps. You leave behind the fishing spot, the swirling gulls, the talking fish legends, the seal that may or may not be judging you, and glide back toward the rocky coast where smoke curls up from thatch-roofed homes and the smell of firewood promises warmth. Not a bad haul, not a bad day. The boat nudges into the shallows with a gentle scrape of wood against pebbles, the kind of familiar sound that means you made it, not dramatically, not epically, just made it. You shift your weight and step out into the icy surf, boots sinking into wet sand with a soft squelch. Cold seawater seeps in instantly, because of course it does. With a grunt, you grab the edge of the boat and start hauling it up onto the shore. It's heavier now, fish-laden and waterlogged, but that's a good problem to have. A pair of older boys see you struggling and run over, barefoot and grinning. They jabber something about monster cod and help you drag the boat beyond the tide line. You nod thanks, too winded for words, and plop down on a boulder to catch your breath. The salt on your lips tastes like victory, or possibly just fish. The line between the two is blurry in this life. Nearby, other fishers are unloading their catches, some more smugly than others. There's that one guy, Bjorn, who always seems to land twice the fish with half the effort. You suspect his wife makes some sort of deal with Njord each week, probably involving smoked eel and heartfelt flattery. He sees your catch and gives a respectful nod. No words, just the Viking version of "not bad, rookie." Now comes the business part. You hoist a basket of your best fish and head toward the market area, a loose patch of flat land near the docks where goods are bartered over low fires and salty gossip. A few chickens wander through the chaos, pecking at stray scales. A dog steals half a mackerel and sprints off, chased by a shouting child and two clapping elders who think it's the funniest thing they've seen all week. You make your way to your usual spot, spreading your catch out on a layer of woven reeds. The smell is intense, ripe, oily, undeniably fresh. A merchant with a cart full of wool glances over and offers a bundle of dyed yarn in exchange for 2 eels and a particularly plump herring. Deal! Your wife has been nagging you for new thread colours. She says everything in your house is aggressively brown. You trade another batch for a clay pot of sea buckthorn jam, sweet sour, and probably the only fruit you'll taste this month. Your final bartering around scores you a bit of honeycomb, some soft cheese, and, if the old woman was telling the truth, 2 eggs from a goose that only lays when the moon is full. Which probably means twice a month if lucky, but still. Goose eggs. As you finish up, a boy runs past holding a fish in each hand, yelling something about a sea spirit blessing his dad's net. Historians still argue whether these kinds of legends were believed literally or simply served as charming community shorthand for lucky break. Either way, it's working for the boy's dad, who's already bragging about buying a new cloak. You carefully wrap your remaining fish for preservation. Some will be dried, others smoked over peat fires, and the rest soaked in a pungent salt brine that your grandfather swore could melt a troll's tongue. You make a note to clean your net before tomorrow. Last time you didn't, it ended up stiff as a board and smelling like betrayal. On your way back home, you pass by the eel guy. He always has the biggest smile and the strongest odour. He gives you a cheerful nod and says, "They're biting better than last week, eh?" You respond with a polite grunt and keep walking. You can still hear him whistling behind you. He once claimed eels sing when the moon is right. You're not convinced. At the edge of the village, an elderly woman sits weaving a net from flax thread. Her fingers move faster than yours ever could. She catches your eye and mutters, "Better not gut that red-striped fish." It sees things. You blink. You had completely forgotten about it. Still wrapped, sitting in your boat like a passive passenger. You smile awkwardly and nod, mentally deciding to let your cousin deal with it. A gust of wind sends a salty spray over the path and you tug your cloak tighter. A group of children are tossing pebbles into a puddle, chanting about sea serpents. You pause to watch for a moment. One of them has drawn a massive creature in the dirt, huge teeth, long tail, and the word glup written under its mouth. Terrifying and adorable. By the time you reach your home, stone foundation, turf roof, slightly leaning to one side, you're ready to collapse. Your arms ache, your feet squelch, and your face feels wind-blown in places you didn't know could chafe. But you made it. The boat is safe. The fish are sold. And your wife hasn't started sharpening the scolding stick yet. She meets you at the door with raised eyebrows and a quick scan of your load. She doesn't say anything, just nods and steps aside. That's about as affectionate as things get around here. You step inside, the warmth of the hearth wrapping around you like a blanket of old stew and burned porridge. You've survived another day on the water and earned your dinner. Just don't track sand inside, or the red fish won't be your biggest problem. The fire crackles softly as you stomp your boots off near the threshold, doing your best to shake loose the grit and sea scum before your wife notices. You succeed, mostly. One small pebble tumbles across the wooden floor and you quickly nudge it under a bench with your toe. She saw it. She's just choosing peace tonight. A good sign. The house is warm in the way Viking homes tend to be, built low to the ground, insulated with thick turf, and always carrying a light aroma of smoked meat, wet wool, and family. The hearth sits in the centre, its flame fed by a mix of driftwood and peat bricks. You peel off your cloak and hang it near the fire. It drips steadily onto the floor, forming a puddle that, by Viking standards, probably counts as seasonal ambiance. Your wife ladles stew into a wooden bowl and hands it over without a word. You take it like it's the crown of Denmark. Your hands wrap around the bowl, soaking in the heat like a sun-starved lizard. The stew is thick, barley, root vegetables, and something fishy enough to make you glance suspiciously at your own catch pile. You eat anyway. Hunger beats curiosity every time. As you chew, the steam fogs up your face. You lean back on a low stool, trying not to groan too obviously. A small child appears from behind a curtain, squeals something incomprehensible about "your boots smell like troll burps," and runs off giggling. You're too tired to chase. You just raise your spoon in mock salute and keep eating. This is the part of the day you secretly love. Not the fishing, not the bartering, not even the moment when the boat finally touches land. It's this: hot food, warm fire, and a brief reprieve from wind and waves. Your wife finally sits beside you with her own bowl. She asks about your haul, and you offer the standard summary. Good cod. Weird eel. Strange red fish I might be cursed by. She nods like this is all very normal. "Don't eat that one," she says, before taking a long sip of her broth. Conversation is minimal. That's not coldness. It's just economy. Viking homes weren't known for soundproofing, so privacy came in fragments. Besides, after hours at sea, most folks are more in the mood to thaw than talk. You finish the stew and tear into a slab of dried rye bread so hard it might legally qualify as construction material. It's tasteless, dry, and perfect. You dip it into the last of your broth and chew slowly, savouring the stillness. Across the room, your cousin snores softly from a woven mat. He claims he's between boats, but mostly seems between naps. You once caught him trying to trade seaweed for beer. No one took the deal, but he's still proud of the attempt. With the meal done, your wife hands you a small wooden cup of warm ale. Not the strong stuff, just enough to take the edge off the chill. You sip it slowly while listening to the soft tapping of your older son repairing a cracked door near the doorway. He's mumbling to himself, cursing the sea under his breath in a rhythm oddly close to a lullaby. As the warmth spreads through you, you stretch out on a low bench, letting your legs dangle over the edge. The fire dances shadows across the walls, illuminating little details. Your father's old fish hook nailed to a beam for luck, a cracked piece of amber from your wedding day, and that cursed wooden fish toy you still haven't dealt with. You'll get to it. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe you'll just bury it in the yard and hope nothing grows teeth. Historians still argue whether Viking family meals were strictly gendered or more communal than we assume. In your home, it's simple. Whoever catches it, cleans it. Whoever burns it hears about it for a week. Your youngest comes back into view carrying a roughly carved wooden boat he insists is modelled after your own. It's lopsided, missing one oar, and has Fish King scratched into the side in runes. You laugh, truly laugh, for the first time all day. He beams. You promise to take him out next time, weather permitting, tantrum depending. It's a quiet afternoon, and that's rare. No broken tools, no surprise raids, no neighbour insisting that their goat is possessed again. Just a warm stew, a healthy haul, and the blessed silence of a full stomach. You close your eyes for a minute, not to sleep, just to rest. A minute later, you're snoring, but only briefly. Your wife tosses a small bundle of nettle cloth at your face and tells you to help clean the fish before the cats find them first. The spell is broken. The day isn't done. You rise again with a dramatic groan, purely for comedic effect. No one laughs, but you imagine they would if they weren't already used to your performance. You grab a sharp knife and a gutting board, head outside to your cleaning stone, and settle into a different kind of rhythm. Slice, rinse, repeat. As you work, a neighbour strolls past and raises an eyebrow. Not too bad for someone who kissed a seal, he calls. You roll your eyes and mutter something about curses and salt water. He laughs. Tell the sea I said hi. You gut the last fish, toss the scraps into the compost pit, or, let's be honest, the pit where things disappear, and scrub your hands in a bucket of icy water that makes your knuckles crackle like dry twigs. You dry them on your cloak, which now smells aggressively like effort, and with that, the midday chores are done. Not glamorous, not poetic, just done. You stretch your back, hands resting on your hips as you admire the modest row of cleaned and sorted fish, all laid out like trophies of a very chilly, very damp war. The red-striped weirdo is still wrapped and sitting off to the side, like it knows it's not invited to dinner. For now, you decide to ignore it, suspiciously. The sun is beginning its slow, half-hearted descent behind the jagged hills. The sky takes on a dull orange tint, the kind of colour that makes you want to wrap yourself in furs and pretend you didn't promise to help mend anything this week. But that's wishful thinking. Out in the village square, or more accurately, the flattest patch of packed dirt between the longhouse and the goat pen, neighbours are gathering for what might generously be called light labour, and less generously be called gossip with chores attached. You wander over with a bone-handled knife in your belt and the faint scent of brine still clinging to your clothes. You're here to mend a couple of net lines, maybe swap some fish guts for information. Viking society, for all its warlike reputation, ran heavily on cooperation. An occasional passive-aggressive whittling. A woman with a carved comb in her hair greets you by offering a chunk of boiled turnip. Unprompted. You accept it because declining food is basically declaring war. She nods approvingly and launches into a story about her cousin's neighbour's sheep getting spooked by an eel. You listen, not because you care, but because she controls access to the best smoked cheese in the region. Around you, tools are passed, jokes are made, and one very old man claims he once carved an entire whale rib into a bench. The bench is nowhere to be found, of course, but everyone agrees it was probably very sturdy. You settle onto a log and begin threading new flax cord into a fraying section of your net. Your fingers work slowly, the repetition more soothing than tiring. Every so often, someone asks what bait you used, or how deep the water was, or whether you made an offering to Njord or just got lucky. You shrug and say something vague about currents and wind. No one needs to know about the cursed fish or the passive-aggressive seal. There's something comforting about this little patch of communal space. It smells like fish oil, wet wool, wood smoke, and a bit like old goat. But it's familiar. You remember sitting here as a child, watching the grown-ups repair nets and swap out bent fishhooks, half listening to them while carving small boats from driftwood. You still have one of those boats. It leaks terribly, but it's good for holding dried herbs. Behind you, a group of children play a rowdy version of pretend raiding party, complete with sticks for swords and lots of dramatic groaning. One child collapses onto the ground, clutching their stomach and yelling, "I've been gut-poked." You suppress a laugh as two more children immediately begin arguing over whether the Valkyries would actually come for someone that whiny. Fringe Viking folklore often included playful exaggerations of battle, sometimes even involving mythological creatures like sea wolves or singing arrows. You think about this as one child pretends to ride a reindeer into glory, while another insists on being a sea troll with a broken oar. Creativity was never in short supply here. Further down the square, someone is carving intricate runes into a strip of whalebone. Possibly a charm, possibly just practicing. You watch their knife dance across the surface, creating patterns that might ward off storms or just say, "Hi, Mum." It's hard to tell. Historians still argue whether everyday Viking folk fully understood the magical meanings behind runic inscriptions, or if most people just copied what looked impressive. You lean toward the latter, especially after your cousin tried to inscribe his name on a comb and ended up spelling eel breath. By late afternoon, most of the repairs are done, and the group begins to dissolve. Some drift toward their homes, others head down to check the tide or move goats from the higher ridge. You linger a little longer, chatting with an old friend who traded fishing for weaving, after a rather dramatic incident involving a jellyfish and a very panicked sprint through the fjord. You mention your weird fish. He raises an eyebrow and tells you to leave it at the crossroads tonight, just in case. You agree. It's probably better than waking up with seaweed braided into your beard. As you begin walking home, the last rays of light streak the sky in streaks of orange and lavender. You pass the longhouse, where someone is already chopping wood for the evening fire. The thudding echoes off the hills like a gentle warning. Day is ending, night is coming, and if you haven't fed the chickens yet, they're going to be very dramatic about it. You quicken your pace slightly, partly because of the cold and partly because you hear something flapping ominously behind you. It's just a cloak, probably. Back at your home, the windows glow with firelight. You can see your wife inside, stirring something in a pot, and your youngest drawing what looks suspiciously like a squid with antlers on the floor. You step inside, immediately enveloped in warmth and the scent of baking bread. The door shuts behind you with a satisfying thud. The outside world fades. You survived fishing, bartering, gutting, gossip, and one possible sea curse. You're doing great. The glow from the hearth is softer now, flickering gently across the walls and casting long shadows over the low furniture and bundled furs. You set your knife and tools down on the bench by the door, kick off your soggy boots, still damp from the morning, and wriggle your toes into the warm rushes on the floor. Your bones are tired in that full, satisfying way. No heroics, no sagas, just a well-earned ache. Dinner is humble but comforting, a porridge thickened with fish broth, a few wilted greens someone managed to keep from freezing, and your earlier prize, a goose egg, boiled to perfection and split neatly in two. Your youngest stares at it like it's magic. You let them have most of it, despite a very adult temptation to swipe the last bite. As you eat, a neighbour pokes his head in the doorway without knocking, perfectly normal, just part of village life, and announces that there's going to be a mead circle tonight. Small one, he adds. No harps, just stories and maybe some very bad singing. You exchange a glance with your wife. She raises an eyebrow. It's not quite disapproval, more like, don't come home smelling like fermented cabbage again. You nod solemnly, as if this is a sacred mission. You bundle up again, dry boots this time, and step out into the twilight, walking the familiar path toward the gathering hall. The stars are just starting to prick through the deepening blue, and your breath puffs in little clouds as you go. You pass 3 other villagers on the same path. One has a goatskin jug. Another carries a carved horn. The last one is already humming. This will be interesting. The longhouse hosting the circle is glowing from within, laughter and firelight spilling through the seams of its heavy wooden door. You duck inside and are immediately hit with the smell of mead, singed wool, and what might be someone's leftover fish stew reheated a few too many times. Comforting in a weird, nasal, offending way. People sit in a loose circle around the central hearth. Most have mugs or horns in hand. There's a lot of leaning on elbows, a lot of relaxed postures, and muddy cloaks bundled at feet. The stories begin casually. No grand declarations or introductions. Someone recounts a tale about a bear that stole an entire basket of bread from a winter storehouse. Another talks about the time their cousin tried to barter with an owl. The owl allegedly blinked once and flew away. A firm no, they say, and everyone laughs. You sip from your own mug. Strong mead, a little spiced, just warm enough to tingle the back of your throat. It goes down easy. Too easy. One man begins reciting a passage from an old saga, dramatically lowering his voice whenever he says sword. He's had a few already. He pauses frequently to relight the same piece of bark. You suspect he just likes holding fire. Then the conversation turns, as it always does, toward the gods. A gentle debate breaks out about whether Thor prefers haddock or smoked trout. Someone insists he once saw a thunderstorm start the moment someone burned a bad batch of eel. Another person swears by a sacred shellfish diet, which gets eye rolls from everyone except the guy currently eating dried oysters from a pouch. You chip in your usual bit about Njord and the luck of the tide. No one disagrees. A good fisherman doesn't mess with sea gods, even in jest. You keep your weird red fish story to yourself, though. Too soon. Maybe next week. At some point, someone starts singing. It's not great, but it's bold. A minor key ballad about a lonely goat who falls in love with a boat. The details are fuzzy. It might be improvised. It absolutely goes on too long, but by the end, everyone joins in the final chorus, and the waves took them both. Ba and a roo. That one will be remembered. You watch the flames flicker and feel the mead settle in your belly. A kind of drowsy warmth wraps around you, loosening your thoughts. You think about tomorrow, fishing again, or maybe mending nets. Maybe finally trading that strange carved bone you've had in your pouch since last summer. Someone swore it was lucky. It mostly smells like cheese. The stories continue, now softer, slower. Someone recites a dream they had, of a fish walking on land, asking directions. Another says they found footprints on the rocks that disappeared into the waves. The line between truth and tale blurs like mist over the water. Historians still argue whether Viking oral traditions preserved history or reshaped it with each telling. You'd argue it doesn't matter. When a story's told with heart and enough mead, it becomes true in its own way. Eventually the circle thins. People drift home, carrying laughter and half-finished songs with them. You rise slowly, joints creaking, and offer your half-full horn to someone still wide-eyed and eager for one more story. You've heard them all tonight. Outside, the stars have come out in full. The village glows quietly in the dark, windows flickering like little floating fires. You walk slowly back to your house, your breath rhythmic and foggy. You feel full of food, of mead, of something peaceful. Back inside, your wife is already bundled under furs. She mumbles a greeting, eyes closed, and you whisper a promise to not track in mud. You only slightly fail. You lie beside her, sighing deeply, a smile playing at the edge of your lips. The seal didn't come back. The fish didn't curse you. The goat song will probably fade by morning. Everything feels still, warm, and good. The fur blankets are heavy, and tonight that's a gift. You sink into them, curling your limbs inward like a hibernating bear, your body humming with the memory of movement. There's a faint scent of smoke in the bedding, left over from drying it near the hearth last week, but it's familiar, cozy even. A Viking lullaby in scent form. Outside, the wind has picked up. You can hear it threading its way through the eaves, nudging the turf roof like a curious ghost. Your youngest has fallen asleep with a toy boat still clutched in hand, breath puffing softly through slightly runny nostrils. You pull a fur over them gently, careful not to wake them, even as your joints crack like firewood. There's no fire left in the hearth, just orange embers fading under a thin blanket of ash. You close your eyes, but your mind doesn't power down just yet. It drifts. First, you see the boat, your boat, bobbing quietly in the moonlight, tethered at the edge of the shore. It's lighter now, relieved of its load, resting like you. The waves lap gently against its sides, and something about that rhythm presses against your thoughts like a soothing chant. Back and forth, back and forth. Then comes the scent of salt and pine, the taste of smoked cod on your tongue, the dull ache in your hands reminding you that yes, you worked hard today, and yes, you're allowed to rest. You imagine what tomorrow might bring. Maybe calmer seas, or maybe rougher. Maybe that strange red-striped fish speaks in dreams, or maybe it'll just end up in a pot with some dill and be forgotten entirely. Historians still argue whether Vikings dreamt of conquest or cabbage. You'd bet on cabbage, at least during winter. A distant thunder roll murmurs across the hills. Not sharp, just a gentle grumble, like Thor clearing his throat in his sleep. You smile. Somewhere, someone's probably blaming it on eel stew. You hope they're right. You shift slightly, tugging the furs closer to your chin. The weight of the day softens, and your thoughts begin to spread out like mist across the fjord. Everything slows. The fire in your chest fades into a gentle flicker, and as sleep pulls you deeper, you dream. Not of battles or glory, but of still water, silver fish flashing below the surface, and a seal with knowing eyes who doesn't judge you, just offers a wink and swims away. Your world narrows to warmth, breath and silence. You sleep not like a warrior, not like a king, but like someone who survived the cold, conquered the sea, fed his family, and didn't fall out of the boat, which, honestly, is enough. Let yourself drift now, deeper and slower. The village fades into quiet, each house curled under turf and stone, each chimney trailing lazy ribbons of smoke into the dark. The last embers of the longhouse flicker low, their glow softening into shadow. Even the gulls have gone quiet. The fjord lies still, barely rippling, like glass resting on the earth's breath. Your boat rocks gently in its mooring, bobbing like it's dreaming too, of tides and seals and seaweed that doesn't tangle quite so much. You're wrapped in warmth now, inside and out. The aches have dulled, the thoughts have quieted, the wind can't find you here, and even if it could, it would only whisper, "You did enough. The nets are mended, the stew is eaten, the songs have ended, the stories folded away, the gods are silent. Even the mysterious fish still bundled in its cloth has decided not to be weird until tomorrow. So breathe, let go of the oars, let the tide carry you. You're safe, you're still, you're home." And as the wind hums low like a lullaby from the edge of the sea, you slip beneath the weight of the night, where dreams are gentle and nothing needs to be caught. Sleep now, fisherman. The sea will wait, sea will gie.